Hey AFNT here. Since the last How to video was a huge success, I decided to turn it into a series. From now on, I'll be making how to guides for whatever killer I want, and whenever a new killer gets released, I'll try to make a how to video as soon as possible. Today we're covering the newest killer to join the fog. Welcome to How to Jason. In today's video, we'll talk about who Jason Voorhees really is, break down his power, weaknesses, perks, the best perks that work with him, my personal strategies and playstyle, and finally, his add-ons. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Who is Jason Voorhees? And why is he one of the most feared killers in horror history? Jason Voorhees is one of the most iconic slasher villains of all time, best known from the Friday the 13th movie series. As a young boy, Jason drowned in Crystal Lake because the camp counselors weren't paying attention. His mother, Pamela Voorhees, took revenge by murdering the counselors she blamed. After her death, Jason returned from the shadows and became an unstoppable force of vengeance. Since then, anyone who enters Crystal Lake risks becoming his next victim. Jason is famous for his worn hockey mask, his machete, incredible strength, and the fact that he never speaks. He doesn't run, he doesn't show mercy, and once he starts hunting someone, he never stops. In Dead by Daylight lore, after years of endless killing, Jason wandered through the forest on a silent, misty night. The woods were completely still. Near a tent, he noticed a rope, tent stakes, and an old hacksaw. Tightening his grip on his machete, he sliced the tent open, expecting another camper. Instead, something else stared back. The creature looked almost human. Its body was twisted and deformed, its face locked into a disturbing grin. Covered in blood and holding an axe, it calmly asked, "Can you help find my cat?" Without warning, it buried the axe deep into Jason's chest. Jason didn't hesitate. He grabbed the creature and snapped its neck. It kept standing. He drove his machete into its stomach. It kept moving. Its eyes were nothing but dark, empty holes, and a horrifying, fleshy appendage burst from its neck. The creature attacked with unnatural strength, breaking Jason's ribs and tearing into his body. Jason fought back with everything he had. He ripped chunks of flesh from the monster, grabbed the old hacksaw, and cut through its neck until its head finally fell to the ground. But even without its head, it refused to die. The body rushed at Jason once again, tentacles bursting from its back, wrapping around him as snapping jaws tore into his flesh. Blood poured beneath his hockey mask, yet he refused to fall. With one final burst of strength, Jason drove both arms into the creature's open maw, lifted it into the air, slammed it into the ground, then grabbed its legs and repeatedly smashed it against a tree until its body was nothing more than a pile of mangled flesh. Even then, the remains began twitching, trying to stitch themselves back together. Before Jason could finish the creature for good, the white mist surrounding the forest suddenly turned black. Inside the darkness, he caught glimpses of frightened people running through unfamiliar woods. Jason stepped into the black fog. The mist parted, revealing a terrified young woman standing before him. Her eyes widened in fear. Jason swung his machete. Her scream ended in an instant. Her death echoed through the realm. Jason had entered the entity's realm. Now let's talk about Jason's power, because this is what makes him one of the scariest killers in Dead by Daylight. Jason has a standard 32-meter terror radius and a movement speed of 4.4 meters per second. While those stats seem fairly average, everything changes once you activate Omnipresent Evil. Omnipresent Evil has a relatively short cooldown, so don't be afraid to use it often. Once activated, Jason charges forward at 8 meters per second. When you enter Omnipresent Evil, Jason leaves his clone. If Survivor get close to it, they'll immediately lose a health state. While Omnipresent Evil is active, survivors leave behind a red steps or a red fog whenever they move or perform actions. This makes tracking them much easier, even without relying on aura reading perks. One of the strongest parts of Jason's power is his jump scare mechanic. During Omnipresent Evil, Jason can exit Omnipresent Evil only by vault windows, dropped pallets, or normal pallets and smash through breakable walls. This lets you catch survivors in places they normally consider safe. If a survivor is within 16 meters when you perform a jump scare, they'll scream and their location will be revealed through Killer Instinct, making it much easier to continue the chase. You can also block pallets, forcing survivors to abandon strong loops and reposition. The second part of Jason's power is spikes. There are two types of spikes: regular spikes and hook spikes. There are 10 scrap piles scattered around the map. You can collect regular spikes from them, or you can interact with hooks to obtain a hook spike. Doing this destroys the hook, but gives you one hook spike to use. Spikes have a very small hitbox, similar to Deathslinger's projectile, so they require good aim. If you hit a survivor with a spike, they'll immediately lose one health state and be pushed backwards. If they're already injured, they'll be put into the dying state. If the pushed survivor collides with another survivor, that survivor becomes injured if healthy, or suffers deep wound if already injured. You can also pin survivors to walls with your spikes. If a survivor is impaled by a spike while against a wall, they'll become stuck until the spike is removed. Hook spikes are even more dangerous. Any survivor impaled by a hook spike becomes broken, preventing them from healing until they remove it. While removing the hook spike, they're also affected by 10% hindered, making them much easier to catch. If a survivor has a hook spike lodged in their chest, you'll be able to see their aura, allowing you to track them across the map. This effect only applies to hook spikes and not regular spikes. If a survivor is impaled by hook spike and enters the dying state, they won't be able to crawl until the spike is removed. And finally, Jason has one of the most brutal finishing mechanics in the game. If a survivor is on death hook, is put into the dying state, and still has a hook spike lodged in their chest, Jason can immediately perform a Mori. The same applies if a survivor on death hook is impaled against a wall by any spike. If these conditions are met, they're executed instantly. Weaknesses. Now let's talk about Jason's weaknesses, because despite how strong he is, he definitely has a few. The biggest weakness is crouching survivors. While you're in Omnipresent Evil, survivors normally leave behind a red steps that makes them easy to track. However, if they're crouching, you'll only see the first 2 steps, and then the steps disappears. So if a survivor knows this, they can make tracking much harder. Another weakness is generator pressure. Even though Jason is incredibly fast during Omnipresent Evil, he can still struggle to keep up with generators, especially if you're not using the Deputy's Badge add-on. We'll talk about that add-on later in the video, or maybe that's just my skill issue. That's also a possibility. And finally, there's something a little weird about Jason's spikes. In most games, when you shoot a projectile, it goes exactly where you're aiming. Jason's spikes don't always work like that. At close range, the spike tends to land slightly above and to the left of your crosshair. The farther it travels, the more it lines up with the center of your aim. It's a bit strange at first, but once you learn the projectile's behavior, it becomes much easier to hit your shots. Just keep that in mind when you're practicing. Now let's move on to Jason's perks. And honestly, I think they're pretty much trash.
Know your fucking place, trash!
Except for one. This is just my opinion, so if you like one of the others, that's completely fine. We'll go from the worst to the best. First up is Rampage, and in my opinion, it's Jason's weakest perk. Every time you manually break a pallet or a breakable wall, you gain 1 token. It has to be done manually, so destroying them with Omnipresent Evil doesn't count. You can gain up to 13 tokens. Whenever you're stunned by a pallet or blinded by a flashlight, and gain 1% haste per token, up to a maximum of 13% haste. Personally, I don't think it's worth it. You have to spend the whole match building up tokens there is not going to be a single pallet on the map to use it well. Next is Hex, Scared to Death. To activate it, you first need to hook 3 different survivors. After that, a random dull totem becomes a Hex totem. While the Hex is active, whenever you break a pallet, all survivors 13 meters from the pallet suffers from 13%, hindered for 3 seconds. It's definitely better than Rampage, but it's still very inconsistent. You have to earn it first, then hope survivors don't cleanse the Hex 5 seconds later. And finally, the only perk I actually think is really good, Silent Shadow. Whenever you hook a survivor, you become undetectable for 13 seconds. Seriously, what's with all the number 13s? But that's not even the best part. Once the last generator is completed, you become permanently undetectable for the rest of the match. That is insanely strong during the endgame. Survivors never know exactly where you're coming from, making exit gates, and the final chase much more dangerous. In my opinion, this is by far Jason's best perk, and the only one I genuinely recommend using. Now let's talk about the perks that work really well on Jason. These are the ones I'd personally recommend if you want to get the most out of his power. First is Lethal Pursuer. This perk is amazing because it tells you exactly where to go at the start of the match. You can activate Omnipresent Evil immediately and pressure survivors before they even get comfortable on generators. Next is A Nurse's Calling. This perk is fantastic because whenever you see survivors healing, you know exactly where to throw your spikes. It can lead to some really easy downs if they don't expect it. Another great choice is Gearhead. It gives you generator information, letting you know where survivors are working. Jason is all about keeping pressure on the right targets, and Gearhead helps you know exactly where to go next. My favorite Hex perk on Jason is definitely Hex, Blood Favor. Honestly, Hex perks in general are incredible on Jason. Blood Favor prevents survivors from dropping pallets after you hit them, making it much easier to stay in chase and finish them off with your power. Another perk I really like is Terminus. During the endgame, survivors have to be much more careful because they can't instantly heal. Combined with Jason's mobility and pressure, it makes escaping much harder. And finally, I'm all ears. This perk is also really strong. Seeing a survivor's aura after a rushed vault makes it much easier to predict where they're going. Line up your spikes or use Omnipresent Evil to cut them off. These are the perks I'd recommend the most, but Jason can work with plenty of different builds. Feel free to experiment and find what fits your playstyle the best. Now let's talk about my personal tips for playing Jason. These are the things that help me the most, and I think they'll improve your gameplay too. 1. Always carry a spike. My biggest tip is to always have a spike ready. Without one, Jason is basically just an M1 killer, and that's where he becomes much weaker. That's also why I really like the Dirty Money add-on, but we'll get to that later in the video. 2. Don't throw your spike immediately. A lot of the time, it's actually better to hold your spike instead of throwing it right away. When survivors see you holding one, they'll often expect you to throw it. They'll start sidestepping or moving unpredictably to dodge it. You can use that against them by simply waiting. Either they'll walk into a bad position where you can land the spike, or they'll give you an easy M1 hit instead. 3. Think of them like Deathslinger's shots. If you've played Deathslinger, Jason's spikes will feel very familiar. They're basically the same kind of projectile, so if you're already comfortable landing Deathslinger shots, you'll probably pick up Jason's spikes pretty quickly. 4. Abuse the small hitbox. Jason's spikes have a very small hitbox, and that's actually an advantage. Don't be afraid to shoot through tiny gaps, windows, or small openings. There are a lot of shots that look impossible at first, but because of the spike's hitbox, they'll actually connect. 5. Prioritize hook spikes. And finally, whenever you have the choice, try to carry a hook spike instead of a regular one. They're simply much stronger. You can see the aura of any survivor carrying a hook spike, giving you constant information. On top of that, if they decide to remove it, they're affected by 10% hindered, making them much easier to catch before they can get away. Master these 5 habits, and you'll notice a huge difference in your Jason gameplay. We're finally at the last section of this video, Jason's add-ons. I'm not going to cover every single one, just the ones I personally like and think are worth using. Brown add-ons, knitting needle. This one makes it take 20% longer for survivors to remove a spike. It's simple, but it gives you a much bigger window to catch them before they can get rid of it. Orderly's shoe. After performing a jump scare, your haste lasts 5 seconds longer. A really nice add-on if you like chaining chases together. Green add-ons. Coroner's coffee. This add-on pushes survivors 25% farther when they're hit by a spike, but you also gain 13% haste for 3 seconds. At first, it doesn't sound very good because you're giving survivors extra distance, but if you push them into a dead zone where they have nowhere to run, this add-on becomes incredibly strong. Sleeping bag. If you pick up a hook spike during Omnipresent Evil, every survivor within 8 meters of any hook is revealed. This is an amazing information add-on and can help you find multiple survivors at once. Blue add-ons iGoob. Whenever you pick up a hook spike, you become undetectable for 13 seconds. Mirror shards. If a survivor removes a hook spike, they become broken. This is a fantastic add-on for a hit-and-run playstyle. Sauna Rock. Any survivor hit by your jump scare suffers from the exhausted status effect. Purple add-ons, burnt fuse. If a survivor has a hook spike lodged in them, in 13 meters exit gates are blocked. Even after they remove the hook spike, the exit gates remain blocked for another 5 seconds. Deputy's badge. Probably one of Jason's strongest add-ons. While you're in Omnipresent Evil, any generator you pass close to explodes and immediately starts regressing. If a survivor is repairing that generator, they're forced to hit a difficult skill check. Missing corkscrew. If a survivor has a hook spike lodged in them, they emit a 32-meter terror radius, while you become undetectable. Iridescent add-ons. Dirty money. For every completed generator, you gain 2 tokens. If you vault a window or break a pallet while you don't have a spike, 1 token is consumed and you immediately receive a regular spike. This is honestly one of my favorite add-ons because it helps make sure you're almost never without a spike. Iridescent boat motor. Whenever you pass a window during Omnipresent Evil, that window becomes marked for 13 seconds. If you perform a jump scare, every marked window becomes blocked for 13 seconds, making it much harder for survivors to escape through strong loops. And before we end the video, can someone tell me how many times I've said the number 13? Because at this point, this is getting ridiculous. That's all I have to say about this video. If you liked it or found it helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a nice comment letting me know you enjoyed it. It helps me know I'm moving in the right direction. That's it. AFNT out.